are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thanks for taking some time out to sit down with us for a little while.
Anytime. I'm
chat.
glad you came out.
Thank you. So you're a police officer,
Yes.
and you work for where?
Modesto Police Department.
Modesto Police Department, and in the Central Valley,
Yes.
California. How long have you been there?
I've been at Modesto for over 16 years now.
Oh, wow, okay.
Hold on. Let me do my math. For over 14 years now.
Okay. So that amount of time, you've seen a lot of changes going on through not only Modesto, but I'm sure with just law enforcement in general.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Law enforcement has had its challenges over the years.
Yeah. A lot going on with I guess just the culture.
We're going to have to...
That's okay.
Okay, let him come in. I don't care. Hey, get over here. Come on. Just push him down. He'll come over here. You better do it fast because he'll bite if you don't do it fast enough.
He's going to attack me on camera.
Get out of here. Go on. Maverick, you're not welcome.
So you've been there for 14 years?
Yes.
What assignments have you done?
Oh, I've been fairly fortunate in my law enforcement career that I've been able to do a lot. So
okay.
I hope you're not allergic to cats.
No.
Come on. You can get in my lap. So in my law enforcement career, I started in San Jose. That's why I originally said 16 years because I was adding those 2.5 years in there. So started in San Jose, worked patrol in San Jose, and then of course when you lateral over, you've got to go back into patrol. So I went into patrol for a few more years. From patrol, I went into the gang unit, worked there for a year and a half. After the gang unit, I went into the narcotics unit, worked there for 4 years, went back to patrol for 3 months. Then I went into detectives, where I worked in property crimes and then economic crimes.
Okay.
After economic crimes, I got promoted to sergeant at the Modesto Police Department, where I worked patrol for approximately a year, and then I've been the traffic sergeant for the police department for the last 3 years.
Okay, so you've done a lot.
I've, like I said at the beginning, I've been fortunate.
Yeah.
I think my hard work has paid off to where I was selected for a lot of different assignments. So I think hard work does pay off.
Absolutely.
I worked really hard to get a lot of the assignments, and because of my hard work, I was accepted into all those units. So I'm very fortunate that I was accepted, but I also I worked hard so that I could get those units. So, but one of the units that I left out, I left a couple units out. I left out, I was a bike officer for a while. I was on the URO team, and then, of course, the reason you're here, I was a tactical flight officer.
Okay.
With the way it worked was the sheriff department had the helicopter, and then since the majority of the sheriff's department patrol in the helicopter was in the city, they asked us if we would participate and if we would provide the tactical flight officers. So I put in for that, and I was selected to be one of the tactical flight officers on the unit.
Okay. We'll back up a little bit. So you said you worked for San Jose for a little while. Were you from that area out there?
No. I was born and raised in Modesto, lived in Stockton for a little while.
Okay.
And then, do you want to know why I went to San Jose?
Sure, yes.
It's an interesting story.
Okay.
So I was in the restaurant business for a little while. Got out of that for personal and family reasons, and I was driving. I went into the computer business for a little while, which was obviously centralized over in the Bay Area. So I was driving home one night in the Bay Area, and I heard an advertisement. Let me back up a little bit. I was bored to death in the computer business.
Okay.
I was miserable, boring. It was not what I expected. So I needed something a little more exciting, something that was more fulfilling, where I could provide some service. And so I'm driving home one night on 680, and I hear an advertisement on the radio that the San Jose Police Department was hiring.
Okay.
So I was like, I got to go fill out an application. So I went and filled out an application, and I got the job. I don't know how or why, but I ended up getting the job.
Okay.
So I was like, this is what I'm going to do.
And they put you in the academy, and then once you get out of the academy, how was it working the streets in San Jose?
San Jose, I thought, was very exciting. There was a lot to do. There was endless assignments. You could pretty much go anywhere you wanted. So I thought San Jose was great, but I never left Modesto. Mm-hmm. I was commuting from here, and it just took its toll on my lifestyle, my family. And so finally I said, I gotta do something different.
Yeah.
And so I put my application in at Modesto.
So you want to come back home?
I want to come back home. Yeah.
How was that transition going from a large Bay Area city like San Jose to Modesto, which is not a small place by any means, but it's obviously smaller than San Jose.
I went from a 1,500 officer police department to a 200 police officer department, and it was a little bit shocking.
Really?
Oh, it was. I should have done my homework a little bit better so that I was more prepared for it. Not so that I wouldn't go to Modesto, because I'm proud of my decision to go to Modesto. Mm-hmm. But I should have been a little bit more prepared, because you walk into San Jose, into the briefing room. A lot of people probably don't know what a briefing room is, but it's where you start your shift.
Okay.
So your shift starts in the briefing room. Every night or every day that you go to work, you start in the briefing room. And so in San Jose, I go into this briefing room, and there's probably 150 seats. And that felt like home to me. There's 150 seats, and you got all these officers, maybe even more. Mm-hmm. And then I go to Modesto, and there's 20 seats, and they're only half full.
Wow.
And I'm like, how are we going to service the people of this city with this many police officers? How are we going to do it?
Yeah.
This doesn't make any sense to me. So that was shocking.
Yeah. I guess there's obviously there's pros and cons to working in a smaller agency. There's, the con would be the opportunities would be probably limited, I guess, for assignments maybe.
I wouldn't. It depends on how small you go.
Okay.
If you go to some place like maybe Ripon, your opportunities are going to be limited. Mm-hmm. But we just went over my career at Modesto. Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
and I've been pretty lucky. I've been selected to a lot of units. I've done more than most police officers will be able to. Mm-hmm. And it was based on my hard work and reputation and stuff. But I've been pretty lucky. And that was all at what some might consider a smaller agency. So I would not say that going to Modesto limited my abilities to do what I wanted to do.
Okay. And you said you work traffic now?
I'm the traffic sergeant.
And how's that going?
It's different.
Is that something you thought you'd want to get into in traffic when you first started? Or were you just kind of unsure?
I had an interest in it because you get to ride the motorcycle, and that's somewhat fun. But it's different because you deal with a different segment of society. As a police officer, sometimes you don't deal with the best people, but as a traffic sergeant, sometimes you deal with the best people that are just making mistakes. And you have to make that adjustment.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to be derogatory or anything like that, but as a police officer, sometimes you deal with the worst people.
Sure.
You deal with the worst people at the worst times of their life, and you have a real impact on those people. Whereas now, as a traffic sergeant, you're dealing with a different segment of society that's just committing a different crime, but it still has still has somewhat of the same impact. I'm sure that your complaints about your main complaints that you're getting in some of your major cities, or in most of your major cities, your bigger cities like Modesto, Stockton, Sacramento, what do people complain about? They're going to complain about the homeless, and they're going to complain about traffic. I mean, that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
The gang problem, the drug problem, the auto theft problem, that doesn't affect a lot of the people. So, but everybody knows about traffic. Everybody knows about the homeless, and so that affects them. So now you're dealing with just a different problem.
Yeah, it's like a constant reminder. You're always seeing the traffic problems. You're always seeing the homeless problem.
And what affects people?
Right. On a day-to-day basis, right?
Right. The homeless and the traffic. And
Yeah.
so that's what they call and complain about. So now I have to go out and address that.
Yeah.
I don't address necessarily the homeless problem, but I certainly address the traffic problem. So now I come from a time where I worked mostly graveyard for my entire career, where I dealt with the criminals, the burglars, the robbery suspects, the murderers, where you're going out and you're trying to find these bad guys. Now I'm trying to find normal people. It's like, how do you adjust to that?
Yeah. Now,
So,
working traffic, do you have to respond to like the fatal car accidents and such too, or is that
yes.
you do?
As the traffic sergeant, we handle all of the fatal collisions. So we handle, and this year we're on course for a record year. We're at 17 fatals, maybe 16 depending on how we work one of them. But 2 years ago we had 20 fatals in the city. So we respond to every single fatal, no matter what time of the night it is. So yeah, we're at 17 this year and counting. Hopefully we don't get any more for the year and we finish it out under our record of 20.
Yeah. How does that affect you as far as having to respond to these kind of fatal car accidents and seeing, what you see as opposed to your other assignments? I mean,
it's kind of interesting. It's hard to explain, and it takes its toll on people. It takes its toll on a human when you go out. I mean, I've gone out to 17 fatal collisions this year, and out of the 17, I don't know how many actually dead people we have, because when you say 17 collisions, it could be multiple fatalities in the collision. So you lose track of them, but each and every one of them takes its toll, because that's a life that was lost needlessly. Because when you're looking at fatal collisions, it's one of those things. Every single one of them is avoidable. There's no reason for that person to be dead, and so you get there and you have to address the fact that someone's dead. And then you have to deal with the family members that might show up, or you have to deal with the family members that want to know why someone's dead. So it takes its toll. It gets, it's hard to explain.
yeah. And it's just something for the family. It's just something so sudden, all of a sudden.
Yes.
And, and it, like you said, it's avoidable.
Every single one of them is avoidable.
And I think that's what probably some people don't understand, the reason that the traffic officers are out there enforcing traffic laws is to try to avoid these kind of collisions. I mean, they think it's just, why are you stopping me? I'm only doing, 15 over or whatever, or I didn't stop all the way. Okay, don't you have murderers to catch? Well, we're trying to avoid having something tragic happen.
That's funny that you say that, because that's the worst thing that you could say to a traffic officer or a traffic sergeant. Don't you have anything better to do?
Right.
And my response is, I have more fatal collisions in my city this year than I have murders.
Wow.
And if you were doing the speed limit, or the next person was doing the speed limit, maybe we wouldn't have 17 fatals this year. Maybe we would have 0.
Yeah.
If people drove proper and prudent, then maybe we'd have no collisions. And then you know what? They'd be right. Then maybe I'd have something better to do.
Yeah.
But until then, we have to address our out of control collisions. We have to address our DUI collisions, because that's one of the number one contributors to death. in fatal collisions is somebody driving DUI. But additionally, you have people that just don't care, and they think that they can do 20 miles an hour over the speed limit. Yeah. 20 miles an hour over the speed limit, and you hit somebody, you're going to be at fault. Sometimes there's just total disregard for others, and if people would drive with that in mind, then and realizing what that does to a family, then maybe they'd adhere to the traffic laws. It's sad to see every day.
Yeah.
DUI and speed, number one contributor to deaths in fatal collisions.
And now that this might be too soon to ask, but now that the marijuana laws have changed in California, are you seeing a rise in DUI marijuana cases or stops or anything like that?
It's funny that you asked that, because back in November of last year, we had a teenage girl that was driving under the influence of marijuana and killed a mother and a daughter. And the Modesto Bee just did an article on it where she's going to be tried as an adult.
Wow. So
there is an increase in people being under the influence of marijuana or other drugs. I mean, let's not discount what meth and cocaine and heroin will do to you while you're behind the wheel. So it's not just the marijuana laws that influence. It's just driving under the influence of anything that's going to affect people's lives.
Yeah. So you're enjoying your time in traffic so far?
Yes, it's a good time.
Is this something? How many more years do you have to go?
Till I retire?
Yes.
I've got 2.5 years, and I'm counting them down.
Are you planning on staying in traffic until then, or is there
No. I've done nearly 3 in traffic.
Okay.
And at our police department, 2 are in traffic for a sergeant is 3 years.
Oh, okay.
So in March, I time out and I go back to patrol.
Okay. So you mentioned working on the helicopter.
Yes.
What got you started with that?
Anytime there's a special assignment or a collateral assignment at the police department, they send an email. Hey, if you're interested in this, put an email or put a memo of interest in, and then we'll do a selection process and we'll figure out if you're a good fit for the team. That goes with any assignment. That goes with the bike team, the URO team, gangs, drugs, detectives.
Okay.
So they put the email out. I was like, this is something I'm definitely interested in. I think I'd be a good fit for this team.
Was this a new thing that they just started, or has it been going on, this program?
It had been going on for a few years.
Okay.
There was a lot before me. There had been several tactical flight officers that worked that were Modesto police officers, but worked with the sheriff's, the Stanislaus County Sheriff's Department.
Okay. And they pilot the aircraft, and you, what's your assignment in the aircraft?
Oh, I can't fly a helicopter.
So they do that part, and are you like an observer?
That's exactly what you are.
Okay.
And when you say you're the observer, it kind of minimizes it, because
that's a big deal.
Yeah, your responsibilities are more than just observing.
Sure.
You're coordinating everything.
Yeah.
So, as the flight officer, you're doing the radios, you're managing the perimeter, basically telling everybody everything that's going on from above.
And this is a full-time position you're doing?
No, this is a part-time position.
Oh, okay.
Because we flew on Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays, and only at night.
Okay. And you found those to be probably the busiest of times, or times where you most need it?
That's why we selected Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays.
Okay. And then as far as those, it could range from perimeters or search and rescue pursuits, things like that?
We got into search and rescue later in my time. in the unit, but when I first got in the unit, it was primarily based on our main function was helping patrol, answering patrol calls. But we did, anytime there was a pursuit, we'd try to get involved, because anytime you can have a helicopter above a pursuit, you're going to do so much better than just a patrol officer.
Right.
So we did pursuits, we did foot pursuits. Basically, anytime you could use a helicopter in a police-related call, we would use it.
How was that when you first started? Had you been in a helicopter before?
I had never flown in a helicopter
Okay.
before. Never.
So how was that when you first started? Was it? I'd never been in one either, so I have no idea. But
It was. You've probably flown in a plane before, right?
yes.
Flying in the helicopter is so much better than flying in a plane.
Okay.
It's so much smoother and relaxing. It's a different world in a helicopter.
Yeah, I bet. And then you've all these. You don't just sit there. You have all these duties you've got to do too. So
You've got your flare camera, you've got your daylight camera, you've got your light, so that you can light things up.
sure.
But then you've also got your radio, very complex radio. So because you're with the different agencies that we're working with, because as the Stanislaus County Sheriff's helicopter, how many different agencies are in Stanislaus County? So the radio is equipped to work with Ceres Police Department, Turlock Police Department, Stanislaus County Sheriff's, Modesto Police Department, Riverbank, Houston. So, I mean, we're dealing with all these different radios.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, it's a pretty complex job. You have to know how to do a lot of different things.
And not only that, but I mean, having to navigate those different cities and locations. Do you have like some kind of computer system that shows you different streets?
No,
Or do you
no. When I was in the unit, you had maps.
Okay.
You had a map sitting next to you, and you had to pull it up and go, okay, where are we going?
Wow. And you got to do this like really quick as the pursuit's going on or whatever's going on.
Yes.
Wow.
When the pursuit's going on, it's a little bit easier, because generally you're going to pick up a pursuit and you're going to be on a main street, and then and then after that you don't generally have to know what street you're on, because you can say, okay, we just went southbound on one of the main streets, and the officers involved are familiar with that area, and they're going to know what you're saying. You don't know what street you're saying, but if you're good enough, you can say certain things where they're going to understand what street that person's on.
Okay. All right.
So back then, you just had to be articulate enough that you could let them know what street the person was on without really knowing what street they were on. So if I went down to Turlock, which I'm not familiar with Turlock at all, it was my goal to go, okay, now this person is going, they made a right turn on this street, and this is what I see, and it would be my goal to let those officers know exactly what street they were on. They would be able to figure out what street it was on based on what I'm saying. Okay. And I don't have to know the street. Now, the helicopter's been so updated that they can say what street the person's on.
So they have like GPS or something?
Oh yeah, now it's so complex that that the map tells them.
Nice.
So
well, that's good.
I wish I would have been there now.
So you're on the helicopter, and well, you mentioned already there's quite a significant incident that happened while you're on the helicopter.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about that? Go from the beginning of the call?
We can talk about it. So it was Father's Day weekend of 2008. So it's June 14th, and the Sheriff's Department has their posse rodeo down at the Turlock Fairgrounds, or the Stanislaus County Fairgrounds in Turlock. And me and the pilot, Rob Latapy, awesome pilot, because it's the Sheriff's Department rodeo, they want us to come down there, and so that the people attending the rodeo can see the helicopter.
Okay.
So we go down there, and it just so happens that my two brothers are at the rodeo. So I'm like, well, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go sit with my brothers that are enjoying the rodeo. So Rob lands the helicopter there in the rodeo grounds, and I go up and I spend, I don't know, hour with my brothers at the rodeo. And at the end of the rodeo, what we're going to do is Rob and I are going to get in the helicopter and fly through the stadium. We do a low fly through the stadium. Mm-hmm. And so the rodeo's coming to an end, and it's probably 10 at night or close to 10 at night. And it's obviously dark, so I say bye to my brothers that are having a good time. I'm like, okay, you guys be careful going home. I'm going to go back and we're going to go fly, and then we're going to take care of the rest of the calls in the county and the city for the rest of the night, because I'm working a 10-hour shift, 11-hour shift, so I know I've got some hours to work. So I meet Rob back at the helicopter. We get in the helicopter, we launch, and then we do our fly through of the stadium. And as we're coming up, as we're finishing the fly through, we hear a radio call from the Stanislaus County Sheriff about somebody, or the way it comes about, they don't say it's a father, but they say a man's beating a child. And it's way out in South County, way down near Merced. And so we're like, that sounds odd. And so then they're updating the whole time that this man's killing the child. And so Rob says, we're going to this. You need to find it on the map.
Is this the kind of call you would typically respond to in the helicopter, or not usually?
It's not something we would say no to.
Right.
We would typically go to anything that we thought we could be the first ones there.
Okay.
And give an update to.
Okay.
It's an untypical call, is my
Right.
point. I wouldn't say that we would respond to it. I wouldn't say we wouldn't respond
Sure.
to it. It's kind of a unique call where it's like, okay, you got somebody out at the county border, mm-hmm. Beating a child. So it's like, why wouldn't you go?
Right.
As a police officer,
yeah.
that's your goal, mm-hmm. is to go out and address issues like that. So the pilot says, okay, we're going. Find out where we're going. I'm like, I don't know anything about South County. I've never been to South County. Where are we going?
Yeah.
And so he goes, you need to find it. And so I pull up these maps that I was talking about, uh-huh. And I'm like, I can't find it. And so now I'm starting to stress out because I can't find it on the maps. And he's all, it's Blaker and Bradbury. Find it on the map. I'm like, I can't find it on the map. And so I'm starting to get tunnel vision. I'm starting to lose, my fingers stop working because now I'm getting stressed. And when you start getting stressed like that, you stop listening, you stop seeing, your fingers stop working, you lose a lot. Because it's like, okay, this is a high stress incident. And I'm like, I gotta find out where we're going.
And this whole time they're still giving you updates about the call?
Oh, they're still giving us updates. And now, as these updates are coming in, now I'm going, okay, this isn't a joke. This is the real thing. Because a lot of times as police officers, as somebody calls in, what you originally hear isn't what you go to. Mm-hmm. It changes, and usually it minimizes. Well, this one didn't minimize. This one, as we're getting closer, it's getting worse. And I'm like, okay, this is the real deal. So as we're getting there, they're saying, okay, now the bad guy has a knife. he took a knife from somebody at the scene or something similar. I'm like, okay, this is really bad, and this is the real deal. This isn't a misperception of somebody's view at the scene. This is really happening. And so now I'm starting to get stressed because I can't figure out where we're going. So I'm going through these maps and I'm like, okay, I found where we're going. Okay, so, and this whole time the pilot's like, don't worry about it. I already know where we're going.
Oh,
He's like, I just wanted to make sure that I was going the right direction.
okay.
I was like, when he said that, all the tunnel vision, the hearing loss, the stuff that you get when a lot of people don't know when you're involved in a critical incident like that, that all your motor functions, your hearing, your sight, things really diminish. And so this is starting to happen to me. And I don't realize it. But as soon as he says, don't worry about it, I know where we're going. I took a deep breath. I was like, okay.
So now you can concentrate on
Now,
the
yeah.
call.
Now I'm like, okay. And that's when I realized all this stuff that was happening to me. So I took a deep breath. And I'm like, it's going to be okay now. I'll be able to get there, and I'll be able to take care of business. I'll be able to stop what's happening.
Yeah. And you don't realize it as it's
I don't
happening.
realize it as it's happening. No, I have no idea. But when he said that, I was like, okay, this happened, and this happened, and this happened, and now I can address those issues.
Yeah.
And I was like, take a deep breath. Everything's okay now. And I was like, just relax, because you're going into a bad situation, and you have to handle it properly. I don't know what I'm going to have to do when I get there, but I know that I'm going to have to do something when I get there. And so I was like, okay, relax, get your mind back in the good place where you need to be so that you can address what's happening. So I did that.
How long did it take for you to get from where you left until when you went or got near the scene? Was it a long time, or did it seem like forever to get there?
It seemed like an hour.
Okay.
But you're going to ask me for an accurate time. I, to this day, don't know.
But it wasn't an hour, though.
No. It was far less than an hour.
Okay.
But to me, it was not fast enough. We couldn't get there fast enough because as a police officer, your job is to address situations. When somebody's in danger, you want to help that person. And I wanted to help that person so bad. And with it coming in, with the guy now having a knife, and he's talking about demons and the child being a demon, I'm like, I've got to help this child. And that's why it feels like an hour to me. I mean, it feels like eternity. I'm like, Rob, can't you fly this any faster? And he's like, we're going as fast as we can. Just relax. We're going to get there. And so, but in hindsight, that time might have helped in helping me get to the right state of mind, get rid of those bad things that were happening to me with my sight and my hearing and my heart rate and all that sort of thing. Because when you get put in those situations, your heart rate accelerates and you don't realize what's happening to you. There's a lot of physiological things that happen where your body's going through stuff and your mind's going through stuff, and it's going to limit what you can do.
And it's got to be difficult to step back and, like you said, realize what's going on and notice those things so that you can, is there something you can even do to overcome those things once you realize what's going on?
I think the best thing that Rob did for me was said, don't worry about it. I got it. I know where we're going. And he relieved that pressure from me. And it made me realize what my body was going through, what my mind was going through, and I got to readjust.
Okay.
And I got to go, okay, reset yourself, because when you get there, you've got to be able to act.
Okay. So, as you're near the scene, you're still getting these updates, and then what are some of the things that you see as you get near what's going on?
So very soon after Rob says, "Don't worry about it. I know where we're going." We're flying in, and I distinctly recall flying past a patrol car going out there with its lights and sirens. Okay. So I remember passing them, and I'm like, "Oh, okay, this is great. We got help on the way." And they're fairly close. So now I've got help. But we get, because I mean we're flying at over 100 miles an hour. Mm-hmm. We obviously pass the patrol car, and we get well ahead of him. And as we fly over the scene, I see this. There's you can make out people in the street, but the one thing that I really made out was a male adult was standing over a child that was in the street, and he picks the child up over his head and slams him on the ground. And I was like, "How could you do that? Why are you doing that? It's horrible." And then he kicks the kid. And I was like, "Why? How, as a human being, can you do that?" And I don't know if the child's alive or dead at this point. So, as we come over, this happens a couple times. And Rob, I don't remember exactly what Rob said at that point. But I know he made the decision to land the helicopter. And we're a few hundred feet over the ground, and I'm already unbuckling. And my plan is to go stop this, to go get this guy. I'm like, I cannot, as a human being, I can't tolerate this. This is horrible. And so we're a few hundred feet over the ground. I've still got my helmet on, but I've got all my safety equipment off. And I'm like, "Rob, I'm ready." And he goes, "Not yet. We're still too high." Oh, wow. "Let me land the helicopter first." And so I'm like, okay, let me know when. And so he comes in. He lands this thing so fast. I mean, it felt like we were falling out of the sky. In fact, I looked at him, I'm like, "You're coming in a little fast." I'm like, "Are we crashing?" And I'll come back to the crashing part later with the deputy that we had passed. So remind me about the deputy that we passed and the crashing if I don't get back to it. So he lands the helicopter, and I'm fairly. He lands the helicopter, and I get my helmet off, and I go to address the situation. So let me step back before I get to the rest of the situation. Let me step back to when I was a child.
Okay.
So when I was a child, my aunt owned a ranch, and she had cattle on the ranch. So she had all the barbed wire fence around this ranch and stuff, and she had the electrical hot fence around the whole 6-acre ranch. And so when I was a kid, you touch those things, it hurts. You get shocked. Uh-huh. And so this is one of the memories that went through my mind as I'm running from the helicopter to the bad guy. It's weird how clear your mind gets while you're doing things that are like you're gonna have to go address something, but your mind gets real clear, and it goes back to things that you think about. So my brother and I were at my aunt's ranch, and we were trying to get out to the pasture. And as we're going out to the pasture, we got to get through the barbed wire fence and the hot wire fence. And so I'm wearing these shoes, not knowing that the rubber soles protects everybody from getting shocked. So my brother's like, you touch it and see if you get shocked. So I grab the hot wire. I'm like, oh, it's not hot, right? Not knowing that I'm wearing rubber soles, insulating me from getting shocked. So as typical in cattle ranches, you spread the barbed wire and you climb through. And so I climb through. My brother's like, you go first. So I go through first. And as soon as I get down on all four and I touch my knees and my hand to the ground and the hot wire on my back, what happens to me? I'm getting shocked with 50,000 volts. Now I'm sitting there going, get me out of here. And it was like, this is horrible. So I'm getting shocked so bad. And so as I'm running up there, I'm like, this is a cattle ranch we just landed on. I'm going to get shocked if I do much of this fence. So I got to be careful getting over this fence. So
within seconds, this is all this.
All this is going through my mind. I'm like, I'm going to get shocked if I try to go through this fence, over this fence. I'm going to get shocked. So what do? I mean, I got to be able to get to the bad guy. And the whole time I'm running to him, I'm yelling, stop, please stop. And I'm thinking he's going to run. Mm-hmm. That he's just going to run from me. And I completely anticipate that I'm going to get in a foot pursuit. How am I going to get over this electric fence and get up and catch this guy? And so I'm running, and he's still, again, picking up the child, throwing the child down on the ground, kicking the kid in the head. So the kid is just spinning like a top in the middle of the road. And I'm just like, oh, I've got to stop this. I've got to do everything I can to save that kid. Whatever I can do to save that kid. And so I get up to this fence that I anticipate is going to be a hot wire fence. And I'm like, I've got to stop this guy. If this kid's alive, I have to stop him. So I pull out my gun and I tell him, stop. And he goes to kick the kid one more time. I'm like, I'm not going to let this happen.
Does he respond to you at all?
They say he did. I don't see it. But the people that were there with him, trying to get him to stop, say that his response to me was flipping me off. I have to take their word for it. I believe that he did. I didn't see it at all. So, with the anticipation that he's not going to stop and that he's going to kick the kid again, I chose to stop the deadly force that he was using on that child, and I had to use deadly force, unfortunately.
Wow. So what happened right after that?
Well, I was standing at the fence, and I pulled the trigger on my firearm. I got my sight picture on what I wanted to hit to stop him. And my one shot was a good shot, and it instantly stopped the threat to the child. And he dropped to the ground. I was able to successfully navigate myself over the fence without getting shocked, and went over. And by then, now the deputy's there, and I've got other people there. The father's laying on the ground, and now it's time to start picking up the pieces.
And this is an amazing thing, because this is you in the helicopter traveling this distance with this call continuing to update, and then you getting on scene, having to run through this pasture, and then still be able to take aim and take the threat, take down the threat. I mean, your adrenaline must have been pumping, but you're still able to do this with all of that's been happening with your body.
That's where that's where I go back to the pilot relieving all that pressure from me. What he did when he said, "Don't worry about it, I know where we're going," is he relieved the pressure from me. And so then I was able to readjust myself and get everything back in order. And had he not done that, I don't know if I would have been able to. I would have still taken the shot, because I mean that's what was necessary to stop the threat on the poor
Right.
child. But had that stress still been there, I don't know if I would have been able to take the shot that I took, and had it been as successful as it was.
Yeah.
So, the resetting myself, the rechecking myself before I got there, and I got there with a clear picture, with a clear frame of mind. Adjusting my vision, my hearing, and the adrenaline never stops. But at least I was able to address it, and I was able to know what I was going through and recognize it. That was the main thing. That's what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
Is I was able to recognize what my body was going through.
Right.
And so once I recognized that, then I was able to adjust accordingly.
So once everything's, I wouldn't say settled down, but once the threat has been stopped, what's kind of the after action that's going on? I mean, you have the original reporting parties still out there, and then you have the child, and you don't know at the time, but that's the father of the child, the suspect, correct?
I didn't know it at the time, but based on the circumstances, I had to assume that it was the father.
Okay.
It's a 2-year-old. I mean, how often is a 2-year-old not with
Sure.
The mother or the father? Plus, it's Father's Day weekend.
Okay.
So, yeah, the bad guy's down, and now I've got the bad guy down. I've got the child there. So, when I look back on it, out of everybody involved in the whole situation, my part and the pilot's part was probably the easiest part in the whole incident, just because we got to act and we got to do what we're trained to do. Unfortunately, I had to take somebody's life, which isn't an easy thing to do, but I did it at the hopes of saving a 2-year-old child. And when you do that, you should be proud of yourself. And so I've always been pretty proud of that. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to save the child. There are people that were involved in the whole situation that had it worse than I did. Because when you're involved in something like that and you get to act, you get to be proud. And I was proud of my actions from that incident. I still am to this day, because I did the right thing. I did it to save a 2-year-old child. Something that we should all do. But when I look back and I see the things that other people had to do, I feel bad for those people. I think about the people that had to ride in the ambulance from Blaker and Bradbury, which is where the incident occurred, all the way to the hospital, trying to save that child. and they couldn't do anything. They just have to hope. So those guys had some emotional difficulties dealing with that. I didn't have to deal with that. Going back to the deputy that we passed, he was on scene when I took that shot. I didn't see him. He had turned his lights off. I didn't even know he was there. It was pitch black. So, back to the part that I want to talk about that I didn't want to forget is he's pulling on scene, and the helicopter pilot is landing the helicopter so fast that he told me after this incident. I talked to him a couple months when I ran into him in court. We had never touched bases after that incident until we were in court. And he told me, he said that we landed so fast that he thought he was going to have to deal with the child being killed and this person that's killing the child, and he was going to have to deal with the helicopter crash.
Wow.
So imagine what's going through his mind.
Oh, wow.
So he's got this. He's got a helicopter crash with two of his friends, and then I show up and I try to neutralize the threat of the bad guy, try to make him stop harming this child, and now this guy that shows up on scene thinks that he's got a helicopter crash, doesn't know where the shot comes from, and now he has to do CPR on this child.
Wow, there's just a ton going on.
Put yourself in that guy's shoes, not my shoes. I got to do what I was trained to do. I got to do what I thought was best. And this poor guy, he's got to deal with all this stuff. He doesn't know what's going on with the helicopter, his friends. He's got a dead guy laying in the street. He's got a baby that he's trying to do CPR on, that's head has been beat to mush, that he's trying to save. Oh, emotionally for him, how do you go through that? As police officers, we see so much that we shouldn't see, and yet we have to move on about life and act like everything's fine,
and do it all over again the next
and
day.
do it all over again the next day.
Wow.
Yeah.
After this what happened, what was the response from the community? What was the response from the department?
You go through a lot, and I originally, immediately after the shooting, I was in the gang unit at the time, and so the gang unit pretty much, they had a lot of freedom, so they could pretty much go where they wanted because we addressed gang issues throughout the county. And it was fairly early in the evening, so they were still on. And so fortunately, they all got to respond. So they all come out, which was a relief, because I'm out there in the middle of nowhere. I've got the sheriff's department out there. Some of them I know, some of them I don't. So I'm like, I'm kind of, I just shot somebody. I'm like, oh my God, what is going on here? But then my partners show up, and I'm like, okay, I feel a little bit better. And so I take a ride. Obviously, I have to go from Blaker and Bradbury. I have to go all the way back to the police department, because now the legal process starts, the internal affairs process starts, the district attorney wants to know what I did and all that sort of stuff. So I've got a good 45-minute ride in a car back to the police department. And the whole way there, I'm thinking, I just shot an unarmed man. What is going to happen to me? Because I'm at my mind was clear while I'm, like we talked about previously, my mind's clear during the shot and during my my decision making. But after that, your mind, or at least mine, stopped. I stopped thinking like, okay, what you did was the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because now I'm thinking, okay, what's going to happen to me? I just shot an unarmed man. While I was taking the shot, I know what I did was right.
Yeah.
Because I'm using deadly force to stop a deadly force situation. But on my way back to the police department, I'm not thinking that. That all was gone. Now I'm thinking, oh no, I just shot an unarmed man. I could lose my livelihood. So now I'm dealing with that. I'm like, this is really, really bad. So I got back to the police department. I was there till fairly late, probably 3 a.m,
Mm-hmm.
because I had to have to talk to the psychologist, or I think she's a psychiatrist. I don't remember. She was great. She treated me like I was her child, which was good. Because when you're in a situation like that, you want that sort of figure in your life that's gonna treat you right. So, they have to do their whole process of an officer-involved shooting. Got home fairly late. Went to sleep. I slept probably 3-4 hours. It was Father's Day weekend, so I went to a Father's Day party at one of my good friends' house out in Hillmore. Meanwhile, this whole thing is processing, and eventually it evolved from a feeling of I did something wrong to people actually believed in what I did.
Mm-hmm.
And that whole process wasn't a very long process. It was maybe a couple days.
And this is something that came out in the media, and there's a large showing of support and favor of what you did from the community and the media.
Amazing support, which I did not anticipate. I thought it was going to be the other way around. I thought that they were going to be, they weren't going to trust what I did. They weren't going to believe in what I did. They were going to think what I did was bad. And so a lot of the stuff that goes on in today's media, when officers are involved in shootings and it's somewhat when it's what's the right word? When officer
There's maybe questions that are raised.
Yes, when it's questionable. When
right.
It's questionable. I thought in the media's eyes and in the eyes of our citizens, I thought it was going to be a questionable shooting.
Mm-hmm.
And after, just a couple of days, the support that I was getting was overwhelming. I was like, okay, I might not, it might be okay.
Yeah.
And so then I started to relax a little bit and realize that I had done the right thing. But for that brief time, you think that you second guess yourself. You think that you might have done something wrong.
And law enforcement is one of those rare careers where when you make a decision at work, if you work anywhere else, you make a decision at work and you make the wrong decision, then, the company knows. But when you make a wrong decision or a questionable decision or any kind of decision in law enforcement, it's all over the world. It's in the media. So you're going to get scrutinized in what you do.
Yes and no.
Okay.
In law enforcement, you make the right decision and the wrong decision all the time.
How so?
Police officers are people.
Mm-hmm.
We make mistakes all the time. As a society, we just have to realize that and not be so judgmental. It reminds me of being the traffic sergeant. I stopped it. I was monitoring traffic. I catch a car doing 72 and a 45. It was a white Acura. I catch a white Acura and I stop it. And I get up to the car and I look at the person and I go, okay, this doesn't make any sense. I stopped the car for doing 72 and a 45 and I've got a mom in a white Acura. I'm like, I think I might have made a mistake. You just have to realize that sometimes we make mistakes. I had the wrong car.
Yeah.
I stopped the wrong car. And so I talked to her. I'm like, I just radared you doing 72. She's like, it wasn't me. And I go, you know what? I think you might be right. And you know what? She was mad at me. But I'm like, hey, I said I might have made a mistake. I'm not perfect. Don't be mad at me.
Yeah.
So we make mistakes. We make mistakes all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, your intention was good, but yeah.
Yeah, my intention's good because I have to correct this person that's doing 72. I got the wrong car.
Sure.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No. Go on. That's all right. Take him with you too. So I kind of lost our train of thought there, but
so the outpouring from the community was positive.
Yes.
The support from your department was positive as well.
Yes, very positive.
And then, so during or after the investigation, that's when you learned that this is the father of the child, and the report. And I've looked at this at some of the articles, but I guess the reporting parties out there heard him saying something about demons and.
Yes. So the one of the reporting parties was actually a volunteer fire chief for Crow's Landing Fire.
Okay.
And he was in a car of 5 people, and so he was watching the whole thing. And during this whole incident, the father was saying, "I have to get the demons out of the child," and the firefighter had something in his pocket. I don't know where. I imagine that it was in his breast pocket, or I thought it was in his breast pocket, but I mean it could have been in one of his other pockets. And the suspect approached him and he's like, "Give me that knife. Give me the knife. I have to get the demons out of the child." And that was another thing that came out, was that now the bad guy has a knife.
Okay.
Which was completely inaccurate. He didn't have a knife, but it was reported that he had a knife that he had taken from somebody on scene.
Okay.
And so as the responding officer, now you've got somebody saying the child's a demon, and they put that over the radio. He's kicking the child, he's tossing the child. Now he has a knife. I mean, it's one of those situations where it's like, this has got to be stopped. So you're taking all that in and figuring out how you're going to address the situation.
And then later on, correct me if I'm wrong, later on they found that the suspect had no drugs in his system or anything. It was just it just went for some reason. This is what happened.
He had no alcohol and no drugs in his system whatsoever. But I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but it would be apparent to me that he had some mental issues. It did come out in the sheriff's investigation that he would, after him and his wife separated, that he would call her on occasion and tell her that there's demons in the child's room and that she needs to go get rid of the demons in the room. Or there was demons in the child and she needed to get rid of the demons in the child. So this wasn't an isolated incident. This was an ongoing incident that the family had to address.
Wow. So now, do you ever pass by that area still on patrol?
It's funny that you ask, because I had never been back. I'd never been back to that area. It's way in the South County, and there would really be no reason for me to go back to that area because it's kind of isolated. If you don't live out there or you're not doing agriculture, you wouldn't go out there. I've been past it several times because to get out to Crow's Landing, which is where we do our EVOC training, which is our high speed pursuit training and our driving training. We do that out in Crow's Landing. So we use Crow's Landing to go out there. So we're way down in South County quite often. But I had never gone out to that specific area. But for the 10th year, the incident occurred in 2008. Yeah, for 2018, I wanted to go back out and revisit it. And so on June 14th of 2018, I went out there.
And how was that? What did you see? Or
it was weird because I had a hard time finding it. So I went out there and I drove past it several times, and then I stopped and sort of revisited where I thought it was. And then when I was out there, I went, okay. I thought that I was I knew we were in a field, but I wasn't sure what field it was. And so I went out there with my wife. She'd never been out there before. And one of my coworkers. So I went out there and I was trying to figure out where exactly it was. And I didn't know where it was until I parked my motorcycle and I got out and started walking around. And I walked over to a canal bank and I stood on the canal bank and I was like, okay, that's the field that I was in. And I had forgotten that after the shooting, I was standing on a canal bank. And I had forgotten until I was standing on that same canal bank.
wow.
And I was like, I was standing here 10 years ago and I forgot. But that's the field that the helicopter was on, that the helicopter was in. And I was like, these are the things that your mind does to you when you're in these situations. You don't realize it. I had no memory of standing on that canal bank until I went and stood on that canal bank again. And I went, I stood on this canal bank with the sergeant from the Stanislaus County Sheriff and talked about what had just happened.
So just being there, even 10 years later, brings back these memories that you'd forgotten. Or
I had no memory of it until I went and stood back on that canal bank.
Yeah.
And when I did it, it was in broad daylight at, I don't know, 2 or 3 in the afternoon. Mm-hmm. And this happened at 10 in the evening. So, it wasn't like even the same time frame. But I stood on the canal bank and I was like, oh, I've been right here before.
Wow. Have you thought about it much before then? I mean, is it something that constantly goes through your mind through when you're going through certain calls, or is it something that comes up every now and again? Or, I mean,
You mean the event, the shooting?
yes.
I don't think there's a day that goes by that I don't think about it. It's one of those things that you have to live with for the rest of your life. And I don't think it's so much because I had to use deadly force on somebody. It's because of the fact that I couldn't save that child. That hurts a lot. That's what haunts me.
Have you had any contact with the family?
No,
Never.
no contact. I've thought about it. I don't know. I don't. I would. I would be open to it. From what I understand, she was the teacher in Denair, and my hope is that she's recovered and that she's doing good. But I don't know what her feelings about it would be. So, it's something I would be open to it, and I wish them the best. But I could understand why they might not want to ever meet me.
Yeah.
I completely understand either way.
I've looked at some of the articles on the shooting, and like we mentioned already, the outpouring from the support from the community was so positive, and
That was we talked about that, and that was
Yeah.
one thing that I want to mention. I received letters worldwide. People sent letters from Australia, England, France, all over the United States, Maine, South Dakota, West Virginia. I had letters. I had probably 1,000 letters from all over the world. And it was, a lot of them were people that wanted to express how proud they were, but the majority of them were from people that experienced child abuse.
really,
It was shocking. People that would write letters saying how they experienced child abuse and how they were proud of what I did to stop the abuse. It was shocking how many people.
that probably wasn't something you were expecting to get.
I was not expecting it one bit.
After that, were you on the helicopter on the flight after that, or did you?
I remained on the helicopter team until, oh, what year was it? I was on the team for 6 or 7 years, and then I think I was in detectives, and I just got too busy, and they were adding people from the sheriff's department, so it was one of those things where it's just like, I don't really have time, and you guys are trying to grow the unit, and I'm not an asset to you anymore. So, you guys, you're better off without me at this point. What I would want people to learn from situations like this or from incidents like this, I think there's going to be officers that go through these things. And what I want departments to learn, not necessarily the new guys, but I want the people at the police department to realize that it's not about them. This situation wasn't about me at all. This situation was about Axel and that poor baby that was killed. And I never wanted this to be about me. But there's some people at police departments that are so selfish, they want it to be all about them. And when I say that, I'm getting away from this situation. I'm getting, as a police department, let's start realizing, as supervisors and administration, let's start realizing what officers go through when they go through situations like this, and start addressing it appropriately. So what I mean by that is, don't when you're reaching out to these officers that are in these bad situations, you don't know what they're going through. Or you might know what they're going through because you might have been through them in the past. But if you haven't been through them and you don't know what they're going through, don't make it about you. Don't send them messages about you'd be there if you could, but you can't because you're working out. Or you'd be there if you could, but you can't because you're with your wife. Don't make it about you. Make it about that person that's going through that bad situation. Get them through that. I think as departments or as people, we fail, and we focus on ourselves more than we focus on the person that's going through that bad situation, or that family that's going through that bad situation. We need to realize that they're stressful situations that affect us mentally for a very long time. You're dealing in law enforcement, we're dealing with people that act like they're strong. They act like they're emotionally stable, which most of us are. But we're also emotionally enough stable. We're stable enough to realize that people are more concerned about themselves than everybody else. And it's disheartening.
Yeah.
And when our officers go through these bad things, and that's my goal as a sergeant and as just a person, if my guys are going through these bad things, I want to check on them. I don't want to check on myself. I want to make sure they're doing okay and their family's doing okay. And that's what the new guys need to hear, and they need to know. From those of us that have been through these bad things, that there's those of us that actually care, and we want to make sure that they are ready to come back to work, that these bad situations are okay to be in, and that as a department and as a person, I'm going to help you get through it. I'm not going to make it about me. I'm going to make it about getting you ready to do your job again.
Yeah, that's important, is to have that support. People sometimes forget that, I guess. And
it's very common for our administration to forget that.
yeah,
I just want to make sure that the new officers are, you got to mentally prepare yourself to be out there. It's the department's responsibility to make sure that you're trained. It's the officer's responsibility to make sure you're prepared.
yeah,
If you're not prepared to be in a situation like this, you're letting yourself down, and you're letting other people down. It's your department's responsibility to get you trained so that you can deal with it properly, but you have to mentally prepare yourself.
yeah, and that's important. Is I don't know if people really take. I mean, you learn about tactics and officer safety, but I don't know if there's much training or information given out about mental wellness or health, or being healthy. And
There hasn't been for years. They expect us, go back 30 years. They expect you to be, Iron Man, where none of this affects you. We're getting better at realizing that this stuff affects you. But my point is, you can do a lot for yourself if you mentally prepare yourself for these types of situations where
Right.
you better be prepared. We're in a society now where you don't know when something bad's going to happen.
Yeah.
Look at the latest officer down.
Right.
You have to be mentally prepared to do what he did. And if you're not, you are doing your community a disservice. That guy's a hero.
Yeah.
And he was mentally prepared to do what he needed to do. And the new guys need to realize that sometimes you're going to have to do those bad things that you don't want to do. And if you're not mentally prepared to do it, you're going to fail.
Do you think there's a looking back on it, is there a difference, do you think, with maybe the generation that came on when you came on until now, as far as being mentally prepared for those kind of things, or if the newer generation are being more complicit when it comes to calls like that?
I think the newer generation is better, or they're better trained to deal with some of the stuff that we go through.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there are some that prepare themselves for bad situations, and there's some that want to act like that the bad situations are never going to come. And I don't think there's a difference from 100 years ago, 50 years, 30 to now.
Okay.
There's some that are prepared mentally to do the bad things that sometimes we have to do. Because what I did is it's not a good thing. I mean, I had to take somebody's life. That sucks. But I was mentally prepared to do it. If you don't train yourself and you don't think about it mentally, you're not only, if you end up doing it, hopefully you get through it and you get through that situation. But how are you going to handle it for the next 10 years, the next 20 years, for the rest of your life? I think about it every day. I couldn't save that child. I'm okay with my actions. I still get emotional that I couldn't save that child. It's hard. But I'm okay with what I did.
Right.
Because I mentally prepared myself. If you're in law enforcement today, you better mentally prepare yourself. You better train yourself to get through that situation. And that's talking yourself through it when you're going to work. You know, what am I going to do if this happens? What am I going to do if that happens? It's an everyday process. It's an everyday learning process in your head of what am I prepared to do today?
Just running these constant scenarios throughout your mind, and you know, when you're on calls or
Yes.
all the time, just if this happens, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that.
Yes. Because if you don't, you're letting yourself down, you're letting your police department down, and you're letting your community down.
What are some of the things that helped you get through, or helps you continue to get through this critical incident? I mean, you'll never forget it, obviously, but what are some of the day-to-day things that help you kind of cope with that?
Oh, my family. It's kind of after that, my life kind of changed drastically. I lived for work back then. And after that, I went, my focus is wrong. And now my focus is family. I work so I can have my time off.
Yeah.
I don't focus on working so that I can have extra stuff. I focus on my family.
I guess it's easy to fall into that trap of, your profession is who you are, and like you said, your focus is just on.
I think you hit the nail on the head right there. My focus was my profession. My profession was who I was, which was wrong, completely wrong. And now, 10 and a half years later,
Mm-hmm.
my profession is not who I am. I'm who I am.
Yeah.
I'm a completely changed person. I realized that life's about having fun and spending time with those that you enjoy and that you love. And so that's where my priority is now. I work my 40 hours plus. I get my job done. But when I'm off, boy, do I have fun now. That's one of the things that the younger generation should know. Don't work overtime. There's nothing wrong with working overtime because the department needs you. But don't need the department. You need to concentrate on yourself and what makes you happy. And if your work is what's making you happy, you better reevaluate your life.
Wow, that's a good point.
And that's what I did. After that, I reevaluated a lot and changed my lifestyle.
Yeah, because when your focus is on just the job, then your family suffers because you're concentrated on that. But also, I mean, if your profession is what defines you, and then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, you're injured or something, and you're no longer in that profession, and now you're kind of lost at that point, or you're not really sure of what to do, and it could be really, it's tragic.
Yes. I couldn't say it any better, but yeah, you're right. Here's the thing with law enforcement. I don't know if you realize this or not, but if you look at an agency like my agency, and you compare or look at how many people retire, make it through the whole career and retire, and how many people don't make it through their career from getting injured on the job, getting fired, changing professions. Not very many people make it a full career in law enforcement, which is sad.
Yeah.
Because it's a very rewarding career. There's nothing better than being able to serve your community and being proud to serve your community. But there's not very many of us that make it to the end. And that says a lot about the profession and about the person or the people that are doing the profession.
Yeah, it takes its toll on your body and your mind, and at least in California, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but before you retired at 50, and now you retired, the newer people retire at 57, so even longer.
So let's talk about retiring at 57, because that's accurate. Fortunately, I'm one that gets to retire at 50 because I got in early enough. I could not imagine. See, I've promoted because I've talked about it already. I'm a sergeant.
Mm-hmm.
So, as a sergeant, I get to supervise people. I get to go to some of the best calls and that sort of stuff. But and I still get to do a lot of the hard work. But most of the hard work is done by the officers. So, as an officer, now that their time's been extended to 57, even if you start at the age of 30 and you have to go to 57, that's 27 years of hard work. I don't think I could go to 57 doing the type of work that we do, emotionally, physically. There's just it's a different profession now. I mean, you got a 57-year-old man getting in a foot pursuit with a 20-year-old gangster.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
we're. I think that we're doing our community a disservice by pushing an officer to the age of 57.
And like you said, not many people get to reach that retirement age anyway, and probably even more now, where it's going to be.
Right.
Well.
So, and we expect them to go to 57. We're not. We can't get many to make it to 50.
Mm-hmm.
I bet it's less than 50% that are making it to 50. And now we're going to try to get them to go to 57.
Yeah.
It's going to be 25% that make it to 57. They're going to get new careers. They're going to do something else. They're going to get emotionally burnt out. They're going to get physically injured. I can't tell you how many injuries I've had as a result of work. How many surgeries I've had.
So overall, what your experience in Modesto, were you overall pleased that you had the opportunity to work there?
I started in San Jose, and I had a good time in San Jose. But then when I went to Modesto, I was like, okay, this is home. I'm glad I made the right decision, and I've had my ups and downs, as we all do in every career. You know, no matter where you work, if you work, doesn't matter what department, what agency, what business you work for. We all have our ups and downs, but I wouldn't change it for the world. Modesto's treated me like gold.
Yeah.
I mean, we've already discussed all the different assignments I got to work in. I've been pretty blessed. I can't thank the city of Modesto and the Modesto Police Department enough. They've really treated me well over the years, and I'm more than happy with them.
Yeah, and the community's great too.
Yeah, the community. That's one thing as in law enforcement that we forget when we start dealing with some of the bad guys. We forget how much the community supports us, but Modesto definitely supports their law enforcement. But I have to go back and say, as sergeants and management, don't forget about your people, because I've been in that situation where somebody was definitely more important than me, where they had to tell me that they couldn't make it to one of my critical incidents because they were working out. And that let me know where I stood with how important I was to that supervisor.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget it.
And in turn, it helps you for when you have one of your officers involved in something. It reminds you of the importance of showing that support is.
Yes,
because it wasn't shown to you.
Yeah, you have to. Not only do you have to care about your people, you have to show them that you care. Because if you don't show them that you care, they don't know.
Yeah.
So it's one thing to care about them, because that's internal. But if you don't show them that you care about them, there's no external return to them where they actually know.
Yeah. And that's important in being a leader, not just a supervisor, is actually showing your folks that you care about the job they're doing and you care about them as a person, and you're there to help them in their career and move along in their career. So
exactly.
And oddly enough, there's some folks or some supervisors out there that unfortunately they're more about advancing their own careers, I guess. And
yes,
you gotta look out for your folks. You gotta look out for your people.
Yeah. And then when it comes time for that next critical incident, when you build those interpersonal relationships with them and you realize that there's somebody that cares about them and you're gonna help them get through it, it makes it that much easier for them. Absolutely. Because the media is not going to be there to help them. The media is going to do everything that they can to destroy that person. Unfortunately, that's where we are today. Let's take my incident in 2008 and put it in 2016. Would it have been the same outcome? I don't think so. I think it would have been completely different. I'm still as proud of it today as I was then. But now let's take one of these new officers and put them in that situation and have the media attack them. They need those relationships with the leaders at the department. And when I say leaders, I don't necessarily mean sergeants or lieutenants or captains. They need those relationships and those emotional attachments with people that have been through it, people that have experience, and that could be just a regular patrolman and somebody that they look up to, that they can go to for advice and say, what's going to happen to me now? What's the next step in this process? And somebody that can get them through it.
Are you finding that that's more challenging now that, in today's times anyway, with a lot of the departments that I've talked to, that as you have the senior officers retire and leave the department and you're having this large influx of newer officers come in, that you're losing that ability to do that?
Every police department is experiencing that right now, where the older or the more veteran guys are leaving, and so you're getting a younger and younger crew, and so you have officers that are looking up to officers that have been on the streets for 3 years or 4 years or 5 years. And that's not a bad thing, but it's not always a good thing either. So that's where it's incumbent upon sergeants that have been around a while, that have worked all these assignments, have been in different critical incidents, that know how the process is, to build those relationships with guys. Be friendly to them and know that they can let them know that they can come to you, and that these bad things are going to happen, and you have to be there for them.
Are you seeing, you mentioned being friendly, are you seeing maybe not a disconnect, but maybe a separation between the veteran guys and the young guys?
I don't think so. No. You're gonna have some guys that just are unfriendly.
Okay.
And those are the guys that aren't going to be looked up to. Those are going to be the guys that people don't go to for advice. But as somebody that's in my role, I think it's my responsibility to be friendly to everybody. And let them know that, you know, we're doing the same thing. I don't care what my role is. I don't care what your role is. We're all doing the same thing. I'm going to help you get through anything that we encounter. I've got the experience for it. I've been through a lot of stuff. I know how to get through a lot of stuff. I'm going to help you get through it. And if we're going into a bad situation, I'm going to get you through it. We might not like the outcome. We might not always be successful, but we're going to do our damnedest. And follow me. We'll get it taken care of.
That's good advice. I mean, I know I asked you a little while ago, what advice would you give to the younger officers? But I guess equally important is what advice do you give to the veteran officers, and which is what you just said: share your experiences, be open, and be approachable to the younger guys and gals, and you know, share those experiences and share those mistakes that we've made, so that they don't have to make those same mistakes.
Oh, I've made a lot of mistakes. I've made a lot of mistakes, and I enjoy sharing those more than more than my successes, because they are got some good stories. And it's like, hey, we make mistakes. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. That's another thing that the new guys need to realize. Don't be afraid to make the mistake. Make the decision. Yeah. Make the decision. If you screw it up, and it's not like an unethical decision, we'll get through it. We'll get through it. One of my best stories is we set up on this guy that had just, well, not just, but a week or so prior, he had just he had done a robbery where he shot a clerk, and so the clerk fortunately lived because he was right next to the hospital. So his friend rushed him to the hospital, saved his life. But we find the van that had done the robbery, and we end up sneaking up on this van, and we put some surveillance devices on it and stuff, and then we surround it, and we're just getting ready to. It's this green van, and it's like 3 in the morning, 3:45 in the morning, and we're just getting ready to say, okay, we'll come back to this in the morning because they're not going to leave. Mm-hmm. And the sergeant says, okay, we're going to give this another 10 minutes. Well, 9 minutes later, the bad guys come out to the van because they start thinking we're onto the van. And so they get in the van after going out to the van all night and this and that. Anyway, they get in this van and they're driving it out because they're going to go dump it. And it's our goal to not let these guys go. And so this green van goes out to one of the major intersections in town, and there's nobody else around except for the bad guy's van, the bad guy's follow car, and all of our cars.
Okay.
And so the decision is to go ahead and take this van down. And when I say take this van down, not let this van get away. This is somebody that just tried to kill somebody. So we're going to do everything we can to take this into custody. Take this bad guy into custody. So I know what my role is. I'm not going to let this guy get away. So we're all coming into the area. All these undercover cars are coming into the area. And I see this green van right in front of me. And I see backup lights on this green van. And I'm like, oh, he's going to try to get away. So as I'm coming up, I'm doing like 25 miles an hour. I'm like, I'm not letting this van back up. So what do? I step on the gas because I'm going to ram this van. Right? So I ram this van at probably 40 miles an hour as my partner's getting out of his green van.
That was their van?
No. I rammed my partner's van because I'm focused on a green van. So I ram my partner's van as he's stepping out of it, and he fortunately he gets out of the way because the driver's door had opened, and then I push it forward enough that the door slams, and he's looking back at me going, "What did you do?" Because I rammed this van so hard that it crushes the front of my car, crushes the back of the van, and I'm going, oh no, I rammed the wrong van. And I'm like, okay, I screwed up.
What are the chances of your guys' van and the suspect van both being both being vans first of all, and then both being green, but in the same area?
I'd worked with the same van for, I don't know, 2-3 years. I should have known. But I got target lock on this van with backup lights, and I'm like, okay, it's the bad guy. He's trying to get away. Well, what happened was he tried to put it in park, and he's trying to get out super fast, so he puts it in reverse. So all I see is reverse lights on this van.
I see.
And then he finally gets it in park, and I just ram it, and I'm like, okay, I screwed that one up.
So what happened with the suspect?
Oh, we had so many cars surrounding
still got
them
'em.
that they weren't going anywhere.
Okay.
No, we got everybody into custody. Everybody was fine. But it's like we make mistakes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And share those stories. Don't be embarrassed by them. Did I screw up? Yeah. Am I embarrassed by it? No. Share that so that people realize that we make mistakes. Now the next person that does that, uses that same tactic, open your eyes. Don't get the tunnel vision that I got.
Yeah. And your intentions, like we mentioned earlier, your intentions were good. You wanted to make sure that this person who just tried to kill somebody didn't get away.
Exactly.
And, that's what matters is, why are you doing this action, with your intention?
Well, yeah. It could have ended bad.
Yeah.
I mean, I could have hurt my partner. And had I hurt my partner, I would still take the same responsibility. I would feel worse about it than I do now. I mean, I don't feel really bad because a car's a car. It's just property at this point.
Right.
But we make mistakes.
Yeah.
Don't be embarrassed by them. Own up to them. Move on.
Yeah, and that's key is to, if you make a mistake, don't lie about it. Don't try to cover it up. Like
Exactly.
you said, own up to it. And, you move past it. But the moment you decide to cover something up or lie about it, then that's a bigger problem than a mistake.
That's the worst thing that you can do in this profession. If it's not illegal, immoral, don't worry about it. If you make a mistake, just go, hey, I made a mistake.
Yeah.
Now you can't crash 15 cars in a year. I mean, then you obviously have a driving problem and that has to be addressed, but we're all going to make mistakes. Just get used to making mistakes.
Yeah.
Not only get used to it, but get used to addressing making the mistakes. I could probably write a book on making mistakes and owning up to them and going, okay, here's another one that I screwed up. You have to get used to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And the way you do that is by doing something. Not just standing around, not having inaction, but actually making a decision and executing that decision. And you're right most of the time, and sometimes you make a mistake, but
exactly. Don't be afraid to make that decision. I didn't hesitate in making the decision with my shooting or ramming that van. One of them I really screwed up. One of them I really could have hurt one of my partners.
yeah.
But at the end of the day, I was like, yeah, I ruined 2 cars. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, you take the information you have at the time and you make the best decision that you can, and then you run with it.
And I rammed with it. That's what I did.
Yeah.
So the funny part of that, the ending of that story, that I haven't told many people, was after that, we go back, we do our search of the apartment and stuff, and it's time to leave. And now I've got this crashed car.
Are you still driving it?
I'm still driving. Oh yeah, it's all crashed up. I'm like, I gotta get this thing back to the police department and get a new car. And so I take off on this road. It's a 40-mile-an-hour road, and as I get up to probably 30 miles an hour, because that's the fastest I want to go in this thing, because I destroy it. As I'm going down the road, the hood on it, boom, smashes back on the windshield. And it scares the living daylights out of me. I'm like, what the hell just happened? And I don't think I've shared that with many people. That after I ran the van, now I'm trying to get it back, and now I have this. I'm like, oh no, now I have to tow it back. But
It just goes from bad to worse.
oh, it goes from bad to worse, yeah. So all I did was I took one of those big, we had the big heavy duty zip ties. I took a zip tie and zip tied it down and drove it back and got a new car. And
You do what you can with what you have, right?
Yep. Limited resources. I'm not limited on imagination.
That's funny.
Yep. But I could, like I said, I could write a book on mistakes. Don't be afraid of them.
Yeah.
That's what that's another one of the things that the new guys need to realize. It's fun to make mistakes.
Yeah.
As long as you learn from it.
Yeah. I think it's just hard for people they don't want to be wrong. They don't want to be that guy or that gal and do something wrong that's going to bring a negative light. But I mean, in a
Or
profession-
embarrassed.
Yeah.
Was that an embarrassing moment for me? Yeah. Am I embarrassed about it today? No, I think it's funnier than hell. I mean, let's do it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, you might be embarrassed. Nobody cares. Is your administration going to care because you ruined a car? Yeah, that's their responsibility. But don't worry about your embarrassment. Worry about your career more than anything.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing. What's more important, your embarrassment or your career? I'll take embarrassment every day of my life if I can make it through a 30-year career. And they need to realize that.
Yeah. Well, I think especially now in a world of body cameras where everything you do, including your embarrassments and your mistakes, are going to be captured on film and could be one of those viral videos that goes around the world. There's probably something else that weighs on their mind sometimes. But that's just how how it is now.
I wish that had been caught on
So
camera.
you can watch it later on.
I wish I could sell that. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
So I hope the new guys and the older guys get something out of this. Just go with it.
I'm sure they will. And yeah, again, I thank you for your time.
Anytime.
Thank you for your time.
Good conversation. I'm glad you hit me up for the conversation, and I hope somebody gets something out of it.
I'm glad too, and I'm sure they will.
Good.
And I'm sure, like I said, the community thanks you for everything you've done.
I hope so.
All right, sir.
It's been a ride.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. And that's it.